right, Stokastic, here we go. It's your old pal, EMac, coming to you after a brief hiatus. No show for me last week because I was up in the Windy City, Chicago. It was a lot of fun. Got to hang out with one Greg Ehrenberg and a couple dozen other Stokastic folks, both people that you know from in front of the content wall and those that make the magic happen behind the scenes. But we are here today bringing you a brief show for the MLB strategy show. We're going to dip on out of here about 5 minutes before the hour because we have the MMA live before lock coming up at 11 o'clock today. There's a noon Eastern time lock. I believe the match is in London this week. Greg, I know you're up on MMA. What's going on? Long time no see. How you been?
Yeah, big London card. So that's why that's taking a little bit of precedence over the MLB strategy show, but we're still going to have live before lock and all that later on in the day. So if you guys want more in-depth information, check that out. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We don't have all the data and tools updated on the site as of now because we're doing an early start time to appease the big MMA card that is taking place over in London, Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blades, the headlining event, which I am really looking forward to. But yeah, EMac and I got to meet last week and had a good time. You're one of the people I talked to the most last weekend, probably. You, Eric, Jordan, Ryan, I spent a lot of time with Alex. We played basketball, we talked with each other. But you and I, we walked with each other, going to dinner and sat next to each other. I feel like we got some good bonding time in.
It was a good time. And funny enough, I had a whole bunch of sports betting questions and strategy questions and stuff I wanted to ask you. Never asked you one. We just had fun talking about everything but, the day-to-day grind of DFS. But we talked about how each of us found our way in the industry, what we did prior, or me, my one-off job, the day gig. It was a lot of fun getting to hang out with everybody, except fortunately, Greg and I were about the same height. Everybody else, goddamn giant in this industry.
Yeah.
There were who was the tall? There was like 3 different people that were 6'5" or taller on the Osmo team.
So the tallest is Brody at the company. So Brody, people don't know who Brody is, but he edits a lot of my betting videos. He also makes the graphics you guys see on shows. And Brody is 6'8" and played college basketball and just torched Jordan and I were playing horse against him. But he was the tallest. Also, Tom, who's our CEO, also plays a lot of DFS. And Tom is 6'6" or something like that?
6'6", 6'7", maybe. He's at least 6'6", for sure 6'5". He's like super tall and he's very like mobile too. So you're like, you don't notice. And then you stand next to him. You're like, oh shit, you're a giant.
Yeah, but I didn't really. So I talk with Tom on meetings and in Slack and stuff like that. But he had COVID while we were in Chicago, so didn't really get to see much of him. But yeah, we do have a very tall company. A lot of just gigantic human beings.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. All right, well, we're going to get on into the show here. We're going to cover the main slate tonight. It's a 10-game slate. DraftKings is doing the game 2 of the Chicago White Sox doubleheader. FanDuel is choosing not to do that, which and before we got to get one dig in on FanDuel. Was them not running a secondary featured slate on Thursday the most FanDueling thing ever that's ever FanDueled?
So I actually understand why, because they don't run.
It was 2 game 2s of double headers, but this is a company that lives to thin slice slates. They had it there.
But they don't run double. They don't like to run the double header games because, which I understand, it could become an issue with the start times of the games and when the lineups come out. So even DraftKings, they left off one of those games on Thursday. Correct. Remember, it was who'd the A's play?
Detroit,
Oakland, right? Yeah. They played 2 doubleheaders and they left off the late one because there was no start time for that game.
Right.
It was just whenever the first one ends, we'll start the other one at some point. So it does become a disaster sometimes for DFS. But yeah, FanDuel ran none of that today, though. They are running 2 pretty significant size slates where it's DraftKings that's slicing it all up. For today, we're only going to have time to talk about the main slate because there is that live before lock for MMA right after us. But yeah, there's a lot of baseball games today.
All right. Well, a couple things I do want to mention. We, of course, are sponsored by PrizePicks. We will talk about them. We do have some free content today. We have the MLB ownership projections. But wait, there's more. If you would like to try out literally all of the Osmo MLB DFS tools, you can for free. Because today we have set all of the tools and projections free for the night slate. So you guys can check that out. You can see everything at once and kind of understand how it works and how it may apply to the larger slate when you get the keys to the kingdom for everything. But we're opening up the tools for MLB just for that later slate tonight. So you guys can check that out. Should be a lot of fun. Of course, if you already know how amazing we are, but you haven't signed up yet, use the promo code MLB Strategy Show to sign up, and you will get a 50% off your first week of any weekly package. That's a really, really good deal. So that's half off for any new user of any weekly package using the promo code MLB Strategy Show. All right, Greg, let's jump on into our games here. We've got the Miami Marlins at the Pittsburgh Pirates. Funny enough, when we did our show 2 weeks ago, this same series was in Miami. We are now in Pittsburgh. You have Max Meyer making his second appearance of his career, going against Jose Quintana. Quintana, worthy of a mention because Miami is horrible against lefties. They are adequate against righties, but they are horrible against lefties. What do you like in our first game here?
And one other thing to point out about the Marlins offense is that one of their better offensive players this year has been Jazz Chisholm, who now looks like he's going to be out for most, if not all, of the rest of the season because of a back injury. I think it was a fractured back or something like that. So that is also going to make the lineup even weaker going forward. One more thing to reiterate as we start to talk about these games. We don't have ownership projections or anything like that as of right now. So we don't have access to any of the data, once again, just because it's such the early start time. So that is stuff that's going to be updated later in the day. EMac gave out the promo code MLB Strategy. If you want to get access to all those tools later in the day as that gets updated, that'll get you 50% off. As for this game, I think both of these pitchers have merit as salary saving options. I don't really like either of the offenses all that much. And then as for Quintana, he's only 6,800. He's been serviceable this year. And then also you've got on the other side, Max Meyer, one of the top pitching prospects in baseball. He's only 6,100 over on DK. So in terms of FanDuel, I don't think we need to consider either of these guys on a single pitcher site. But for DK purposes, I think these guys are serviceable SP2s. And now looking at Max Meyer's numbers, you kind of have to take a leap of faith and just believe on the acumen as a prospect because he's only made one start at the big league level. Like you said, this is his second career start. The first one went poorly. He pitched 5 and a third innings. He gave up 5 runs. The strikeouts were there to an extent. He had a 21.7% K rate. But if you look at his minor league numbers, this year in AAA, he had a 28.4% K rate. In A-ball, he had a 36.4% K rate. He has decent projections from Zips and Steamer, over 20% K rate, and an ERA in the low 4s. So when you consider a decent matchup against the Pittsburgh Pirates, how well regarded he is as a prospect, and then also that if we have to take away one positive from his first start of the season or first start of his career, his fastball velocity was on average over 95 miles per hour. So seems to have good stuff, throws hard. Not that either of these pitchers are safe, but large field tournaments, I think they both warrant some consideration.
Yeah, and that's definitely the way to go. And we're also not really going to have to worry about the offenses, not as much leverage going against these pitchers, tiny bit on DraftKings. But, as we saw last night, when you have these larger slates, there's no need to really stack up against a marginally owned pitcher. There's the bang for your buck is not really there. The next game, though, a lot of interest in this one. New York Yankees at Baltimore Orioles. We have Garrett Cole and his amazing strikeout stuff going against Jordan Lyles. It is warmer and more humid here in the DC metro area. That may start to maybe neutralize a little bit of the Camden Yards renovations that occurred in the offseason. That has definitely turned things into a bit more of a almost pitcher-friendly park at this stage of the game, taking one of the best offensive parks sort of off the table. But we know how dramatically things change with the weather. Just looking at the teams in St. Louis, Kansas City and St. Louis, and just seeing how the weather dramatically changes those ballparks. Have a feeling we're going to see something like that with Camden Yards, but it's no longer the homer haven that it once was. You've got Garrett Cole, who's been, I guess, I don't want to say phenomenal this year, but he is 9-2, 3.02 ERA, just under a 1 WHIP. He has been relatively solid. Let's see, in his last 10 games, or I guess only on the season, only 3 times has he allowed more than 3 earned runs. So that's looking pretty good. The last 2 games includes one against Boston and one against Cincinnati, 23 combined strikeouts in 14 innings, allowed just a solo shot, 2 total earned runs. I don't think he will have much problem dealing with the Baltimore Orioles. This will be the 3rd time he has faced the Orioles. He got them in back-to-back starts in May, 16 strikeouts in 15 innings, did give up 7 earned runs there, but I'm not quite as worried about him. I did like the Orioles yesterday going against Jamison Tyone. I like them as a secondary stack. Or a discounted stack. That sort of worked out with what I was doing on Yahoo for me, so I was happy with that. However, no need to go against Cole today. How do you feel about Cole? How do you feel about the Yankees going against Jordan Lyles, who did allow the most home runs in the league last year?
Yeah, so starting with the Cole part, the only thing to really consider here is, would we rather pay up for Garrett Cole or Brandon Woodruff? And it's not that hard to fit both of them in ultimately, because for the millionth time, something that's come up on a lot of shows lately, just the high-end pitching prices they're just not expensive enough relative to what we've seen in the past. So you can make lineups with both Brandon Woodruff and Garrett Cole in them. If I had to pick one, I'm going to lean a little bit more towards Garrett Cole. I get Woodruff as a great matchup at home against the Colorado Rockies, but still, Cole has pitched really well from a fantasy standpoint this year. He got off to a little bit of a slow start, but since then, he's looked about as good as he's ever been. The strikeout stuff, to what you mentioned before, that's certainly been there. So despite some individual starts that haven't been great for Cole, he has a 3.02 ERA. He has a 2.99 expected ERA. He has a strikeout rate north of 30%, 32.9, which is above his career average. His walks are also in check, 6.7% walk rate. So I don't really see too many concerns here other than what you said before, that the weather's been really hot on the East Coast. It's led to more favorable hitting conditions. Potentially baseball at the MLB has been juicing the baseballs, because there seemed to be an obscene amount of offense yesterday. Did it not appear that way?
You mean 28 runs? Wait, no, I was going to set this up. Boston scored or hit 5 home runs yesterday, yet lost by 23 runs. What, that was just like the most outlier game of outlier games approaching. That was, for those of you that didn't see, Toronto played at 28 yesterday. The position players allowed 1 run in the 9th, because the rest of that was hung on the Boston bullpen. Absolute disaster there. We saw an inside the park grand slam that and multiple hits that should have been errors. It was like everybody was just like, F it. How quickly can we get out of here? Where's the 10-run rule?
I didn't get some of the scorekeeping in the game. In general, I think the scorekeeping in baseball is kind of dumb, but the top of a grand slam is just an error to me, because it's a fairly routine fly ball that Jared Duran could have caught. He loses in the lights. And the way scorekeepers typically do that is, if somebody doesn't make contact with it, they just rule it a hit. But to me, that's a fly out. Tapia, even himself, he kind of throws his bat. He's disappointed. He starts walking to first base. But then even after the ball lands, Duran doesn't even try to run and get it. He's so frustrated with the play. He just stares at it and is like, cool, let's just seed the grand slam. But it happened a few times in the game. It was really weird. Like Jeter Downs had a ball that he threw away on a ground ball to second base. They ruled a hit. There was the pop fly on the infield that Chapman hit that just kind of fell between a bunch of guys. They just ruled it a hit. So there was really weird scorekeeping in that game. But that aside, that kind of seems to be the norm with how scorekeeping works, is there's a pop fly and somebody doesn't get a glove on it, they just rule it a hit, even if it should have been caught. But I mean, not that it had any sort of impact on anything of significance anyway. But for this Yankees-Orioles game, Garrett Cole, I think, is very clearly one of the top pitching options on the slate. And then as for the Yankees as a stack, I'm curious to see what the ownership looks like. I really liked the Yankees yesterday, and they came in fairly low owned. On most slates, they would have been a smash, because they put up 7 runs. We got a couple homers. Aaron Judge homer twice. So there's a bunch of really big outings. They were my single entry stack today. I didn't play the Blue Jays in single entry, and I still min cash just by stacking the Yankees. So I feel like on a lot of slates, that would have been a really high end lineup. When you score like 150 points in single entry, it was just a min cash yesterday. But I do think this spot against Jordan Lyles, it could be a good one. So what you said before, Jordan Lyles, a pitcher who typically gives up a lot of home runs when he allows runs. For the year, sub 20% K rate, 5.13 expected ERA. So it's been a rough year for Jordan Lyles, which every year is a rough year for Jordan Lyles. The last time he was actually good was like 2014 when he was pitching back with Colorado. So it's been a number of years where a guy's been getting roughed up. doesn't generate a lot of ground balls, always has an above average home run or fly ball rate. So I think this is another good spot for the Yankees.
Yeah, and the one nice thing is at least DraftKings has boosted their prices somewhat. Judge 6,200. He had 35 and 36 last night for his home runs, adding to his league leading total. You got Rizzo at 52, Giancarlo Stanton at 5,500, Matt Carpenter, who somehow is, I don't know, rejuvenated at least for a moment. 5,500 there. I guess once he got that mustache, the power of his stash is carrying him to new heights here in with his time with the Yankees. But the usual suspects in this one are the ones that we want to look at. Continuing along here, we have the Colorado Rockies in Milwaukee. Of course, don't worry about the weather in this one. They do have the convertible stadium there in Milwaukee. You have Brandon Woodruff coming in at 10,000 on DraftKings, going against Jose Urena, who is at 5,800. A little bit of a remember me game here for Urena, who was with Milwaukee before they released him. Now he is with Colorado. He is a bit of a disaster. That is going to have the Milwaukee bats popping up in our crunches, particularly Rowdy Tellez, somehow inexplicably 3,500 on DraftKings, gets the platoon advantage. He's been slumping a little bit lately, but he is the round mound of home runs, I guess we should call him that. That's a matchup I like here. How do you feel about Woodruff? And you mentioned you could build lineups with both Woodruff and Cole. If you were choosing between the two of them, do you have a lean this early?
Yeah, it's Garrett Cole, and it's close though. I think for cash games, you certainly want to play both of them on DK FanDuel. I lean towards Cole. I ultimately assume when I build lineups, I'll end up getting more exposure to Cole just because I do think that he's the better pitcher. But Woodruff is a damn easy matchup. The Rockies, 21.3% K rate against right-hand pitching, 84 WRC plus, which is not quite the worst in baseball because the Detroit Tigers are insanely bad against righties, but it's pretty close. The Rockies offense against right-hand pitching is third worst in all of baseball, the 84 WRC plus. This is how bad some of these teams are. So there's tiers to this. The Tigers have a 68 WRC plus against righties, just awful, impossibly bad. The A's have a 72 WRC plus, also nearly impossibly bad. Then you got the Rockies at 84. So different tiers of terribleness. The Rockies aren't quite on the level of the Tigers or the A's, but it's about as easy a matchup could possibly get against right-hand pitching. So it's a really good spot for Woodruff. There's a really high floor. I know that Corbin Burns, I wouldn't necessarily say he struggled. He pitched 5 innings, gave up 2 runs, but he was really inefficient with his pitch count, which made it so that he didn't score a lot of fantasy points. But still, I think this is a really good spot for Woodruff against the Rockies. Slight lean towards Garrett Cole, but Woodruff is the second best pitching option for me today.
Yeah, and Woodruff has been pretty good since missing about, if I remember correctly, it was about 5 weeks with ankle and then losing feeling in his fingertips of his throwing hand. I believe we talked about this on one of our more recent shows here, but he has been, I would say back to being pretty solid. He has made 4 starts in the most recent, going backwards, 112, 92, 94, and then 76 pitches. So he should be good to go here. We do like the matchup. And, Corbin Burns is going to have bad starts. The reigning NL Cy Young Award winner. It's going to happen from time to time. Unfortunately, in an easy matchup, it can happen then as well. But I don't let that dissuade you from going with Woodruff on this one today. I'm looking here. Chad had a couple interesting questions. What was the highest score you saw yesterday? They said 277 in the mini max is what Mark Langford was supposed to.
Yeah, well, I know because Mark Langford is in the chat right now. He tweeted at me and I tagged the Stokastic Hall of Fame on it. But yeah, he came in first place and scored 277. Let me look.
Oh, he was the one that's, well, we do have a little awesome Hall of Fame or Stokastic Hall of Fame section coming up here. We'll see if he makes that.
He wouldn't be on it quite yet because, maybe unless we updated it really soon, but he tweeted that at me. It was like this morning. So I don't know if it got added quite yet, but I was going to look at, let's see, what was the winning score in the $15? The winning score in the $15 is 270.6. So yeah, I think Mark had the highest score yesterday. So he wins.
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. Jansen, I'm guessing, was probably on his squad the double home runs from the second catching option on the Blue Jays helps out just a little bit there.
Yeah, I could let's see. I could find Mark's lineup right here
I got it. I got his tweet up on the screen since the Hall of Fame wasn't updated.
Look at that. The best producer in the business.
Does it have the lineup?
No, unfortunately not. It's just the screenshot of Mark winning all the money.
Second best producer in the business. See how quickly things change.
Let me see if I could find. It would be helpful. Is there anything worse than when you try to open up the DK app? If you click the recent, do you know what I'm talking about? You click,
you might as well go mow the lawn or something before it takes
so long to load everything.
I've asked him, I said, can you just load 24 hours worth of stuff? I don't know what you're loading, but clearly it's too much for your system to handle.
Yeah, they try to load everything at once. And maybe it's also because they play different contests in different sports, but the entire app just kind of starts to collapse. But yeah, Mark had the highest score I've seen yesterday, came in first in the mini-max. So congrats to him for sure. And if he's not in the Hall of Fame quite yet, he will be in the near future. As for the other side of this game, where we have Jose Urania pitching for the Colorado Rockies, it's just hard to expect that anything good is going to come from him. I've never seen anything like this before. Zips for the rest of the season has him projected for a 7.14 ERA. EMac. That's the highest I've ever seen. I've never seen that kind of number before. And that is going to be influenced because he has to make half his starts at Coors Field. I understand he's a 2.05 ERA to this point, but he has a 256 BABIP, an 84.8% left on base percentage. He's had an ERA 5.2 or higher each of the last 3 seasons. He's going to have issues going forward, Jose Urania. I have very little doubt about it. I'm really curious to see what the ownership is on the Milwaukee Brewers today. I think this is the team in the best spot of any team on the slate. I just need to see what that ownership is once we get that update.
All right. Let's move on here because we do have a lot to cover, and we do have a hard stop today. We've got the Tampa Bay Rays at the Kansas City Royals. You've got Luis Patino going against Brady Singer. All right, that's enough about the pitchers here. We do have a 10.5 implied game total here. It's going to be warm in Cincinnati. Warm in Cincinnati today. It's also going to be warm in Kansas City, where they're playing today here in Kauffman Stadium. This feels like a good spot for the offenses. What stands out for you in this game?
Yeah. So, by the way, actually, I'm also not totally sure if it's Urania starting. I think it might be Herman Marquez, but that aside, more information that's going to have to be confirmed later on the day for stuff like live before lock and all that later in the day. So check that out later.
Yeah, we can only do what MLB tells us is happening.
Yeah, that's true. So. We are early in the morning coming out of the All-Star break. Sometimes the information isn't always there. Kind of like that other day with that Tigers-A's game we were talking about right before the All-Star break doubleheader. We didn't know who any of the pitchers were at any point during that day. But Rays Royals here. I really like Luis Patino as a pitching prospect. He's really good stuff, but he's not quite stretched out yet. And we've also seen him struggle, or at least he struggled in his last start, which was really his first one of the year, because his actual first start was against the A's. He got 1 out, and then he had a lat issue that ended up, or an oblique issue, that ended up holding him out for the rest of the season to this point right about now. So until Patino stretched out, I don't think we could really roster him. Although I'm not really that interested in the Royals, even though they have a fairly high implied run total. And then as for Brady Singer, he's been solid this year. So I'm curious why the Rays have such a high implied run total, and why overall the total for this game has been set so high, right around 11 runs. But 23.4% K rate for Brady Singer, 3.88 expected ERA. He's not been bad. And I like Luis Patino as a prospect as well. So if I have any action on this game, I would tend to lean towards betting the under. And then assuming that these offenses are both popular because of the total in the game, I'd prefer to be underweight to them because I have a little more respect for them than what the betting lines indicate as far as the pitchers go.
All right, that's an intriguing take. I am also quickly looking here on PrizePicks to see what we have. So Patino doesn't have anything Singer have here. So Singer is posted here, 98.5 pitches, 5 hits, 25.5 at FanDuel scoring for their pitchers, 25.5 points, 5 strikeouts. Any of those numbers stand out to you? I would have said the under on 98.5 pitches thrown, and I still may go there just because of the weather, but these seem all around appropriate for this one.
I'm good with under on the pitches. That seems like a really high number. Also, coming out of the All-Star break, we've seen teams be a little bit hesitant to really stretch pitchers out coming out of the break. Something else also to consider. The Royals aren't playing for anything, so I don't know if there's a need to stretch Brady Singer through well over 100 pitches. So I'd take the under on pitches.
All right. Reminder, if you use the promo code AWESEMO, you will get a $100 deposit match up to $100 on your first PrizePicks deposit. That will also get you 30 free days of Stokastic premium content by using the promo code AWESEMO. I see we have a note here from Jason Floyd. It says, an important question. Well, if Jason's going to ask an important question, then I want to answer it. He says, who's getting KO'd on this slate like the Red Sox last night?
That fraud Paul Craig, who does nothing but pull guard and gets the shit beat out of him and gets Hail Mary subs. This is where that nonsense stops. He's going to get sent to hell by Volkan Ozdemir. All
right. For all you need and more for MMA, you can get the MMA Live Before Lock coming up here in 33 minutes. You will get Jason himself joined by Pete the Heat Rogers as they break down the London card with the noon Eastern lock time there for MMA. Back to our Rays and Royals. Anything else in particular that you would like to call out here?
By the way, we just got updated ownership for everything. So if you refresh all the tools on the site. So just kind of to recap a couple of things we talked about so far really quick, because I know that we are running short on time here. Garrett Cole is the most popular pitcher of the day, projected right around 40% ownership. Woodruff is at 33% over on FanDuel. They're actually really similar, both of them right around 30%. As for offenses, we just talked about, Tampa Bay is projected for 14% ownership. The Royals are projected for 12% ownership. These are two of the most negatively leveraged offenses in our top stacks, which I kind of had a feeling was going to be the case when I just looked at how high the implied run total was in that game, because it doesn't really seem quite right to me, and our projections are aligning with that. Not to say that these stacks are grading out poorly, but just not anywhere near what their ownership is. So these are two teams that to me are not interesting relative to their ownership.
All righty, let's continue moving along here. We have the San Diego Padres at the New York Mets. Blake Snell going for the Friars, Chris Bassett on the bump for the Metropolitans. We're looking at a relatively low implied run total here, just under 8. Two really good pitchers on the mound. I hesitate to call them true stab aces, but they are definitely good. I'm tepid with each of them. I'd be fine getting in maybe 5-ish% below the field. This is usually what I do for the little strategy to remind people as we come out of the All-Star break here. Usually for pitchers on DraftKings, I like playing there because you have the 2 pitcher decisions. Same thing on Yahoo. I usually go under the popularity of pitchers like this. I have to pick my spots where I'm going to go over, and I usually end up going air quote over those that are in that 10-15% range, 5-10-15% range. It's easier to gain leverage on them and not torpedo your whole portfolio. But a lot of times I don't like to go over the really popular pitchers, even as we saw last night with kind of 4 clear cut pitching options. Things went sideways for 3 of them, right? It's just one of those things that's going to happen in baseball. So I don't like to go overboard where it is not warranted. I don't think going overboard on either of these pitchers is where I want to be, but they will be represented in my player pool. Conversely, I'm not exactly fired up to go with any particular hitters on either side here. We've got the Padres, who of course not the same team without Fernando Tatis Jr. And then the Mets, while solid, I still respect Blake Snell enough that I don't see him giving up big crooked numbers here. So kind of has me looking at both these pitchers as SP2s, and that's about it for this game. We have enough other options in our player pool with 20 teams in action on DraftKings that I don't have to go here. What was your assessment of this situation?
Yeah, relative to the high-end pitchers, I don't really have all that much interest in Chris Bassett or Blake Snell as pitching options. If you have some exposure to them in large field tournaments, that's not really an issue. But I kind of like the Mets as a contrarian stack, only projected for 2% ownership. Blake Snell, over the course of his career, especially in the last couple of years, has been significantly worse on the road than he's been at home. So this year, we haven't seen him pitch all that often. He does have a 4.48 xFIP on the road in his limited starts that he's pitched on the road this year. Overall for the year, he's pitched 50 innings, so it's not really that much data to pull from. But if we look at last year's numbers, or if you go back to his numbers when he pitched at Tampa Bay, he was always a really, really good pitcher at home, like arguably the best pitcher in baseball when he was pitching at home. And then when he was on the road, not that he was bad, but there was a drop off. And then last year, if I remember correctly, it would help if Fangraphs was loading a little bit faster. He pitched really well in San Diego. And then he had some struggles when he went on the road. And if these numbers would load, I would have the exact number in front of me. But a web page is slowing down your browser. Would you like to continue? Yes, I would, because I need this information. Here we go. All right. So at home last year, Blake Snell, 2.5 ERA. On the road, 6.12 ERA. Then we look at some of the advanced numbers. At home, 2.6 FIP, 2.85 xFIP. On the road, 5.21 FIP, 4.75 xFIP. These are really, really insane splits. And I think there's an upside in the Mets offense that could go unrecognized. And then also, when Blake Snell has his bad outings, like they go really bad. It's not like a guy who's like, oh, 6 innings, 3 runs for Blake Snell. Like he gives up home runs. He struggles to find the strike zone. He'll sometimes be out of the game in the second or the third inning. So I think the Mets are a pretty good contrarian stack on the slate. Once again, only project for 2% ownership, but with Blake Snell pitching on the road, I see the path to upside.
All right. Eduardo Escobar does stand out a bit. 3,500 on DK, 25 on FanDuel, 10 on Yahoo. Surprisingly, he does have a 250 isolated power in his last 272 plate appearances against Southpaws. So that is a lot higher than I expected. Of course, you've got Pete Alonso, who is just amazing with a 300 isolated power in 280 plate appearances against opposite-handed pitchers. So those would be the call-outs I have there. We also have to consider what Starling Marte, just for his long history of doing well against lefties, probably Mark Canha is inching his way up the batting order there as well. I think he had another home run last night. Any individual bat you wanted to call out here other than those 4?
Alonso always makes sense against a lefty. Particular also, his price is kind of broken on DK. Only 4,500 for Pete Alonso. That has to be his cheapest salary in quite some time. Let me see. Pete Alonso this year. Has he ever been 4,500? I'm scrolling through his.
Probably in Coors Field, first day of the slate.
The pricing algorithm is like 4,500, 46. This is. Yep, I went through the entire season. This is his cheapest price point of the year, and there's only been a handful of games he's been under 5,000. So I don't know why his salary is nerfed so much for this spot, but Pete Alonso makes a whole bunch of sense. Eduardo Escobar, Mark Canha, JD Davis has always also been a hitter who hits left-hand pitching fairly well. So I think there's a lot of right-handed bats to like in this Mets lineup. I'm not sure what they're going to do with Daniel Vogelbach. I assume he's going to be a platoon guy going forward. I think he probably starts against right-hand pitching and then sits against lefties. Remains to be seen because they just traded for him, and who knows if he's going to be active to play today. But yeah, a lot of these right-handed power bats are going to make a lot of sense for the Mets.
All righty, let's go back to our game list here. Cleveland Guardians in Chicago taking on the White Sox. Some disastrous pitching here. Connor Pilkington, no great shakes there. Lance Lynn, oh dear God, is this the end of the road? We got to see Dallas Keuchel released. I had written him up in the last Spotlight Hitters and Top Stacks article, saying that we may not see him after the All-Star break. He's already been designated for release by one, now 2 teams. I think we may see Lance Lynn in a similar boat here. What his last 7 starts, I think he's only made 7 starts this season. I don't have his game log page up, but he has just been an absolute unmitigated disaster. I don't see him turning things around here. Aside from Jose Ramirez, who else do you like from the Guardians?
Yeah, I've been fading Lance Lynn to this point this season. I rostered him once in one start, and it was a big mistake. Other than that, it hasn't been popular to stack against him, and it's generally worked out. He's just not the same pitcher anymore. So Lance Lynn was a finalist for Cy Young last year. I think he finished 3rd in the voting. It was Robbie Ray 1st, Garrett Cole 2nd, Lance Lynn 3rd. Then he's a knee injury in the offseason. He ends up having surgery on it. He is now 35 years old. He comes back, got lit up in the minor leagues when he was working through his rehab starts. And then the thing that was most concerning about me when he was first coming back and breaking into the big leagues is then the velocity was way down. So there's stuff we could point to also where it's like he's old, he's coming off a significant knee surgery, and then just struggling in the minor league. So now at the big league level, 7.5 ERA, he's not going to maintain. It's not going to be 7.5 the rest of the way, but the
it's going to be higher, Greg. It's going to be higher.
It's not going to be good, right? It's not going to be nearly as good as he was last year. I think that much is clear. But even the underlying numbers, even if he's been unlucky to have a 7.5 ERA, he's a 4.55 expected ERA, a 4.78 FIP. He appears to be pretty washed to me. So I don't think he's somebody we should be considering in DFS anymore. I have like stacking opposing offense against him for contrarian purposes, but we're starting to see offense pick up ownership against him, over 5% ownership for the Guardians against him, which is more or less appropriate. That's in line with our top stack odds. So Cleveland's an offense to get to, not all that much different from the field, but Lance Lynn is not somebody I think we should be playing in DFS, at least not in it. Like something would have to change. His fastball velocity would have to come back because he was somebody who used to throw 94, 95 miles per hour. Now at his age and coming off the knee surgery, his average fastball velocity is 92.6. So pretty big drop off there. Until that comes up, I think we could feel pretty good avoiding Lance Lynn.
All right. And then no reason to consider Pilkington, even at 3,600 as an SP2. The Chicago White Sox, been a revolving door of injuries. They got Yasmani Grandal back, but Luis Robert is now out. But they're still solid at the top with Tim Anderson, Andrew Vaughn, Jose Abreu, Eloy Jimenez. I like them all going against Pilkington. Feels to me like more of a team stack situation here. We do have a 5.5 implied run total, so clearly this is not breaking news that they're going to be a good team. And we know we want to look at them against Southpaws. Anything else you want to add to that? I'm just keeping an eye. We got about 20 minutes to go here.
Yeah, not really. More or less appropriately owned, 4% ownership, 4% top stack odds. Pilkington's not been particularly good this year. I would love to get a healthy White Sox lineup to stack. I tried doing that a couple weeks ago when they finally fielded a full lineup, and immediately Eloy Jimenez got hurt in that game, and now we've got Luis Roberts hurt. So this team cannot stay healthy. It's been an ongoing issue with them. I'd be interested to see exactly how many games they've had all of their guys together. Moncada, Abreu, Robert, and Eloy Jimenez. It can't be more than 5 games or so this entire season. So as long as that's going to be the case, it's really hard to back them in a significant way. So looks more or less appropriate owned. If you're playing 150 lineups, getting 4% of them seems about justified. For single entry, 3 entry max, it's not a team that I'd be considering for that.
All right. Actually, a good question here in chat here from Slate Breaker says, when you guys are making hand-built lineups, do you commit to a game script like a pitcher's duel, home run derby, a blowout, or do you just choose the best players possible? So you kind of a little bit of both. So I do Yahoo is where I build hand build lineups, and then occasionally on the subslates for FanDuel. So usually I like to start off with what's my favorite pitcher or pair of pitchers. And then I've usually got a pitcher I want to target. That sort of becomes my main stack. And then from there, I'll sort of fill in usually the best one-offs or looking for home run upside is kind of how I like to play that out. It's hard to plan for a game script in baseball because one team's doing well, 28 runs last night for Toronto doesn't mean the other team is doing well unless you want to say, damn, Boston had 5 home runs. All solo shots, but 5 home runs is pretty good. The only thing that really is that unites the team or the teams in a matchup is the location or the weather. So Coors Field versus Pitching Park versus it's really hot and the wind's blowing out. But even in the it's really hot or the wind's blowing out game, I forget who was it? Rojas, when he had those 3 home runs in Chicago in that insane wind game. Those were the only home runs that hit by either team, right? So even when it's a dramatic weather situation, it doesn't mean everybody's going to do well. So very different than football or basketball when trying to do game scripting or building a lineup around a narrative here. You can kind of get there in showdowns just a little bit, but you're trying to find the most synergy or play out a strategy that you hit the perfect plot line for. That's not going to be the case on any 2 or more games in a contest. Anything you want to add on that one, since there's our strategy part of the strategy show this morning?
I rely on our tools. I'm not really doing anything different. Yeah. I still it's still for DraftKings purposes, 5-man stacks, for FanDuel 4-man stacks. And I'm usually just looking at the ownership and being like, all right, which teams are positively leveraged? And then, so the teams that I would take out of the mix right now for single entry based on the ownership we have, where it's like Tampa Bay, Milwaukee, Arizona, Kansas City, these teams will look massively negatively leveraged in our top stacks tool. And that tends to get amplified in smaller field tournaments, single entry, where stuff that's going to be popular in single entry ends up being even more popular. And I found a lot of success with, if you're just finding a team that has some positive leverage in large field tournaments, chances are they're going to be really low owned in smaller field tournaments. So yesterday, for instance, my single field stack was the New York Yankees. Obviously, the winning stack was the Blue Jays last night, but I still made money last night. I cashed using the Yankees. And what we see with the Yankees today, for instance, they're projected for 6% ownership with 11% top stack odds. And last night, the Yankees, we had them with a slight amount of positive leverage. But then in single entry, Judge was the only one who was picking up ownership. The rest of the players in the lineup were all 2 and 3% owned. So that's just what happens with teams that are lower owned with positive leverage. They end up being even lower owned in single entry. So, I mean, teams like the Rays, the Diamondbacks, the Royals today, these are going to be teams that are going to eat up probably combined like 70% of the ownership in single entry. So I'd be looking at right now the Yankees being the most positively leveraged stack. Like, I don't make it too complicated. That's probably where I'd be going in single entry.
Excellent. All right, back to our game. San Francisco in Los Angeles taking on the Dodgers. This will be a 4:15 local start. This is it will be the Fox. I think this is the Fox game or one of them. You've got Alex Wood going against Dodgers. Tough ask there. 8,000 on DraftKings. Yeah, sure, whatever. Julio Urias going against San Francisco. Decent, got blown up before the All-Star break, but we know San Francisco is going to load up on a bunch of right-handers top of the order there. So I'm not exactly wild about Urias. Definitely he will be in my player pool, but I will be coming in under the field on that. I expect him to be about a 10 or a 15%er here just based on his talent. But that $10,000 price tag starts to get a little prohibitive when you start to think about potential quick hook, tough matchup against a predominantly right-handed lineup, at least until or while he's in the game. Once he's gone, we'll see the Giants flip their lineup and work in some of their left-handed bats that did not start the game. I do think we should give strong consideration here to Betts, Trey Turner, Will Smith, Justin Turner, a little dinged up. Don't know that he'll be in the lineup, but you can discount or cost average down that duo or trio with Hanser Alberto and Trace Thompson, who are both 2,600 on DK. So that's sort of how I would approach the Dodgers here. What is your take on the pitchers? Because I believe it's worth making a specific mention of either or of both of these guys.
Yeah. So when it comes to Alex Wood, he has some weird splits over his career to where I just don't think he's really somebody who's durable enough to pitch an entire season. So pretty consistently what we see is in the first half of the year, he's a quality pitcher. Second half of the year, he starts to fade, both in terms of his results diminishing and his velocity drops off. So I think Alex Wood is a pitcher who could be had by the Dodgers. They're not the highest priority stack, and they are really expensive. But for contrarian purposes, I think they're reasonable to get to. I don't like either of the pitchers in this spot. If I'm paying up at pitcher, I'd rather pay up to get to Brandon Woodruff or Garrett Cole ahead of Julio Urias for a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't think Urias is as good as those guys. He doesn't have as much strikeout upside. But then also, the Dodgers don't typically let him work crazy deep into games. So Urias is typically going to be capped somewhere in the neighborhood of 6-ish innings or so. He's not somebody that has the upside to really work 8 innings or anything like that. So Cole and Woodruff I view as being higher upside pitchers. That and Urias has a tougher matchup. The Brewers, so Woodruff's pitching against the Rockies. Garrett Cole draws the Orioles. Urias is going up against the Giants. But then Urias is also fairly popular. He's projected for 23% ownership over on DK. On FanDuel, Urias is projected for 10% ownership. So it's not we're getting some kind of crazy ownership discount on him. So no interest in the pitchers in this game. I don't have all that much interest in the offense either. But if I had to pick one, the Dodgers are more favorable at low ownership.
All right, that makes sense. And then I had just looked this up. The Cleveland at Chicago and then San Fran at the Dodgers. Those are the two Fox games. A little bit different of a schedule today. Normally, those are the standalone games that start things off for our evening slate. But we have a very front-loaded main slate tonight, with all but 2 of our games going off in the first 15 minutes here, starting at 7 o'clock. And we've got 1 8 o'clock game and 1 9 o'clock game. We have 3 games left to discuss here. Moving on to Atlanta, we have the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim playing in Truist Park. Going to be in the low 90s there to start off the game. It'll cool off just a little bit as the sun goes down, but still going to be very warm, very humid. We saw a little bit of rain there last night in Atlanta. That is going to be our default position through the end of September. Chance of showers, just humidity showers, if they sit over the stadium like they did last night, going to be, going to be a problem. If they don't, hey, not going to be a problem. So it's always tough to tell where those are going. Those wandering storms are going to meander, but worth pointing out that that's kind of going to be what we see as things start to cool off in the afternoon into the evening. It's just kind of a byproduct on the East Coast of the weather. So we have Patrick Sandoval, good pitcher. I don't really want to take him going against the Braves here. Kyle Wright, I really like him at 9,100 going against Anaheim. Did they put Trout on the injured list? Did they not? Okay.
He's eligible to be activated today. Whether that means he is activated and is in the lineup is unclear, but my assumption as of this moment is that Trout will be playing tonight.
Okay. So I don't think that changes things a ton for us. It's if he's out, hey, great. Another tick in the positive side of the ledger there with Kyle Wright, because then he will have, only really be dealing with Ohtani and Jared Walsh. Even if we put in Trout there, it's not, this is a lineup of haves and have-nots here for the Halos. So I think Kyle Wright is worthy of being just a little bit below the Brandon Woodruff, and Garrett Cole options tonight, but definitely should be mixed in liberally across the 2 pitcher sites. Do you want to take any of the Braves against Sandoval here?
Not really. Sandoval's been solid this year. He has a 4.37 expected ERA, 24.2% K rate. The Braves have also had some struggles against left-hand pitching this year. They strike out a whole bunch against them. So I think that I don't think they're unplayable, but they're not a high priority for me. There's a whole bunch of offenses I played before I got to Atlanta on this slate. And then one thing to mention about Kyle Wright, and this should kind of go without saying, but how much I like him is going to depend on whether Mike Trout's in the lineup or not. Yeah. Trout is still one of the best players in baseball when he's healthy. He's just very sporadically healthy. You never know when he's going to be in the lineup or not. But the Angels lineup is so shitty right now. But it's a big upgrade if they get Mike Trout in there. It's just another hitter for pitchers to have to deal with. Taylor Ward got off to a really good start this year, but he's trailed off, which I think was to be expected. There was no way he was going to be able to keep up what he did earlier in the year. But at least Trout would add another potent bat to that lineup and make us there's not another easy out in there. So how much I like Wright, we're going to have to find out whether Trout's in the lineup or not.
Right. If it was Adele in the lineup instead of Joe Adele, would that make the lineup worse? I'm not sure.
It would make a difference. These you can't strike out more than all of your bats.
All right. Last 2 games of the night. Washington Nationals in Arizona, roof scheduled to be closed. You've got Madison Bumgarner at a solid or a nice $6,900 on DraftKings. You have Anibal Sanchez, who is at 5,000 even. Fine price plays for the pitchers here. You've got Nelson Cruz, I think is intriguing against the lefty. I like Josh Bell as well. If Lane Thomas is leading off, I don't mind him as a cheap one-off at 2,700. I think anybody that makes the Diamondbacks lineup is in play against Anibal Sanchez. Great that he's back in the big leagues pitching, but really he's really not that good anymore. Would you focus on the Diamondbacks at all for some differentiation tonight?
Well, right now they're the most negatively leveraged team we have on the entire slate. So,
I didn't look at their pricing. Peralta 3,000.
Yeah,
Alec Thomas 2,900.
We have them projected.
It's the 2 expensive pitchers, and then these guys. Is that the build that's coming out?
Yeah.
With the
So okay. Here's the build for the slate. It's people are rostering Woodruff and Garrett Cole, and then stacking either the Royals, the Rays, the Diamondbacks or the Brewers for some sort of salary saving. So as a result, all 4 of these teams are projected to go over-owned. So what I want to do with my offenses is just go kind of anywhere else. It's clearly a great spot for the Diamondbacks. I think Anibal Sanchez is way beyond washed at this point, but I don't think that means they should be 13% owned against him. So I'm be looking elsewhere. I'm just going to hope some other team is the highest scoring team. Fingers crossed it's the Yankees. That's the team I plan on getting the most exposure to given the data we currently have on the site. It's clearly a tremendous spot for the Diamondbacks. A lot of these hitters warrant cash game considerations. For tournaments, it's just too much ownership for me.
All right, that's fair enough. Tyler, we'll talk about the Hall of Fame after this final game here, if you want to get that slide up there for us. Taylor Hearn, $7,000 going against the Athletics. Very reasonable. Athletics, no bueno. So definitely consider him. It's going to be very cool tonight in Oakland. It's going to be around 60 degrees when the game starts. You've also, on the other side, got James Kapralian. Yikes. Has he had a tough go of things? I'm not interested in him at all. He would, if I was ranking our 4 pitchers for the 2-game late slate, he would come in 3rd, barely above Anibal Sanchez. I think Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, and Adolis Garcia are the guys I would like to target. I don't mind Cole Calhoun as a late slate one-off at 3,200, regardless of where he lands in the lineup tonight. I think Taylor Hearn is worthy of an SP2. He would be someone I'd roll the dice and go over the field on DraftKings. I don't think it'll take much to get there. I'd probably cap him at 20-25%. What do you have for our last game of the night?
Yeah, so last game of the slate, I think the Rangers make some sense as a contrarian team going up against James Kapralian. He just has been bad this year, 15.2% K rate, so he's not generating swing and misses anymore. 4.9 expected ERA. He appears to be a pitcher that can be had. One thing that is a little bit concerning is that this game is being played in Oakland, so it's a very favorable pitcher ballpark. We also get low implied team totals in this game. As for Oakland, it's also a good spot for them against Taylor Hearn, but Oakland is such a bad offense that despite how bad Taylor Hearn is, we only have Oakland with a 1.8% chance to be the top scoring team. So we actually have the Rockies going up against Brandon Woodruff with a better chance of being a top stack than we do Oakland going up against Taylor Hearn. So I can't really consider Oakland, but I don't mind Texas as a contrarian team just because Kapralian has struggled so much this year. Not one of my favorite teams on the slate, but if you're playing 150 lineups, I do think it's a team to be overweight too.
All right. Slatebreaker asks, how do you guys know what people are doing? Is it just projections? I believe this is talking about the ownership in the field. Well, outside of December, our ownership projections are really good. We employ Santa Claus in the off season because he can see everything. So he knows what everybody is doing. So
it's an algorithm. It's
called Santa Claus though. That's the algorithm.
Should I not have
said that? Am I going to get in trouble now?
No, I was just going to say, we only have like 30 seconds left. So we're not going to have time for the Hall of Fame segment because the MMA show is going to take precedence here.
All right. That's fair enough. And Greg's an MMA fan. So we're going to go with that because Greg's in charge. You guys didn't know that, but Greg is in charge here. So we will say PrizePicks. Use the promo code AWESOME, get yourself a $100 deposit match, and get 30 free days of Stokastic premium content when you come in and sign up with that promo code AWESOME. You can check out the free video content that we have most days, giving you prize picks, particular picks. You can also check it out on Twitter. You can ask us our favorite picks, or you can go to oddshopper.com. And once you have signed up just with your email, that's it. You'll see all of the projections coming out of the DFS models, and that will help guide your PrizePicks selections as well. PrizePicks, it is a lot of fun. It is a player prop site. You can build cards with 2, 3, 4, or 5 questions, a multitude of ways to win, from mega upside by getting all of them right versus choosing some flex packages that protects your downside if you miss 1 or 2 of the questions. But with that, we are going to seed our spot for Pete the Heat Rogers and Jason Floyd as they take you up to lock for MMA London. With that, gamers, good luck.